Well, everyone, the culmination has arrived. The 4 year buildup that started in 2008 culminates with this movie right here, Marvel's The Avengers, the big dance number, the movie that unites every single character shown up to this point. Uh, written and directed by Josh Whedon, and of course starring Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Jeremy Renner, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, and of course, this also stars Mark Ruffalo, who replaces Edward Norton as the Incredible Hulk because Norton had a falling out with Marvel before production on this movie even began. Whoa! So of course, the Avengers has a lot to live up to because this is the movie that ties all of them, that ties everything together, and not for a lack of trying, this movie does a really good job at doing so. When I first saw this movie in theaters, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And after watching it again, my opinions on it haven't really changed. I still like it. It's still fun. It's still a fun movie. Of course, when you watch it now, yes, the story is very light, and this is going to be a very tough review because normally when it comes to certain movies, if the story is light or doesn't work, that could affect the grade for some people. But I'm gonna look at this movie for what it really is, which is which is pretty much action set pieces with character bantering and character development. So in terms of that aspect, this movie nails it out of the park. In terms of that stuff. In terms of story quality, what little story is there is serviceable. It's able to tie everything together. It may be a little flimsy, in some points, but for the most part, it does what it needs to do in a satisfying way. And if you can suspension of disbelief, it won't take you out of the movie whatsoever. Because to me, the Avengers as a movie, it works. Of course, the Avengers. Of course, the movie taking place after that post-credit scene of Thor. Loki is the villain of this film, but we also find out that he's being backed up by a mysterious benefactor. Who is that, I wonder? We find out the post-credit scene, but before we jump the shark, let's talk about some stuff. So yes, Loki's back, and he's going to be leading an army of called the Chitauri to pretty much take over the Earth, because as we established in Thor, anyone who comes pretty much from another cosmos will be considered god to us mere mortals. And of course, Loki, being that he is already a god, will be worshipped as such a deity. But in the scene where Loki pretty much makes his grand appearance, which happens to be in Germany, coincidentally, haha, he pretty much tells everyone to kneel, and they all kneel, which plays into the whole God factor. But there's this one person, this one old man who rises up, and of course the movie will allude to the fact that he's dealt with tyrants before. Well, WW2, I wonder who could he be referring to. So yeah, that whole stuff with Loki is pretty cool, and of course his introduction scene. I know I jumped the shark a little bit, but his whole intro scene is also pretty cool, where pretty much invades Shield's base, if you will, and he brainwashes Selvig and he brainwashes Hawkeye, and they try to kill Nick Fury and Maria Hill, but they manage to escape, which is great. Now, a lot of the things about this movie I really like are the character interactions and the fact that a lot of characters are made pretty interesting. Case in point, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. In this movie, she is used more effectively and is 10 times better than Iron Man 2 could have even hoped to have done her. They actually give Black Widow some history, some backstory. We find out that she is a highly really. It's established that she's a member of Shield, but this movie, she's a highly skilled assassin, from the Russians, who was brainwashed to kill, and then Shield took her in and kind of set her on the right path. We also established that her and Hawkeye have a long history with one another, like a partnership, friendship, if you will. So when Hawkeye is revealed to have been compromised, it affects Black Widow because Hawkeye's a friend and partner, and Hawkeye was the one that set Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, on her course of redemption. So she has a personal stake in it to do the same for Hawkeye. Right there, you gave her own little subplot, and you gave Black Widow her own little subplot, and you made her interesting. Iron Man 2 failed to do something like that. So of course, Black Widow is a cool character because she has something to do. And Hawkeye's made a cool character too. Even though he doesn't have much of a character, because for the first half of the movie he's pretty much brainwashed. In the second half of the movie he's back to being good old Clint Burton again. But he doesn't really have a whole lot to do in general. He really doesn't. But his story and Black Widow's story are connected. So in my eyes, they both have some little things going on there. And we also have Stark's story, which is still ongoing, and he goes through his arc. He and Pepper are fully into their committed relationship. Stark is creating Stark Towers in New York, and is using self-sustained clean energy. So that whole thing is happening with that. And of course, we have Captain America, who is the man out of time, who is struggling to assimilate to present day culture. But it's not done in that weird, like, oh, what is this? It's more along the lines of, this is very different times than what I was accustomed to. Of course, Captain America's story won't be fully fleshed out in the Winter Soldier when I get to that. But until now, the stuff with Cap in this movie, I tend to lean towards because I think it is actually pretty cool, and it does plant a lot of seeds for what's to come with the future of Marvel. Like, it plants the seeds for Winter Soldier, and the tension that brews between him and Stark plants the seeds for Civil War. So having known everything now, when you go back to watch the Avengers, it feels like it is a pilot movie, but at the same time, while it's planting the seeds for things to come, it doesn't detract from what's happening right now, which is a good thing. Because everything is working towards that one goal, which is to get Loki and to take away and to make sure he does not bring hell on Earth, which is what happens in the climax. Let's stay the course a little bit. And of course, being this is Loki's the villain, we have Thor, who has been sent to Earth to capture Loki and bring him to trial on Asgard. So he has his own. Thor has his own personal stake in this thing because Loki's his brother, and he has to bring his brother back to face judgment for the crimes he committed, not only in the first movie but in this movie too. Because in a pretty humorous scene, Black Widow says Loki killed 80 people in 2 days, and Thor has the line of, "He was adopted." I love that line. And of course, we get to Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. And I really, really wish Edward Norton would have came back because I would have loved to see Edward Norton interact with these actors. But not gonna lie, I do like Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. I really, really do like Ruffalo as the Hulk. He does a fantastic job. I like the way he plays the Hulk as this more of a world-weary guy who is trying so hard to stay calm in every situation that he's in. And when he does, and of course, when Mark Ruffalo does get the chance to Hulk out, the Hulk, looks awesome, and he's causing havoc and destruction. As I said, this movie has a lot of really cool action set pieces, and there's a ton of them. There is the helicarrier scene where the Hulk is just destroying everything, and at the same time the Hulk is destroying everything, you got Loki's mind-controlled, army attacking the helicarrier also at the same time. So the Avengers there's so much stuff going on, but it doesn't take away from anything. But even before that, when the characters meet up in like the woods, we have Iron Man and Thor having a pretty humorous battle. We have a really cool scene where Captain America tries to break it up and was like, tells Thor, put the hammer down, and Thor's like, You want me to put the hammer down? And he and the shield connect, and this big fucking sonic boom happens, and like the whole forest goes down. So that stuff's pretty cool too. But back to the helicarrier scene, we also get a cool fight scene with Thor and the Hulk, and knowing what's going to be happening later on in the year with Thor Ragnarok, it again plants the seeds for what's to come with Hulk and Thor with Ragnarok, and how their relationship is going to develop further, which is going to be great. Because up until this point, they haven't really, Thor and Banner haven't really had much interaction with each other in terms of like actual like sharing dialogue exchanges. It's mostly Thor trying to deal with Hulk, Banner in Hulk form, and pretty much becoming a punching bag for Hulk, because we established that Hulk is a more powerful being than Thor and Loki, because he's able to not only hold his own but manhandle them in certain scenes, which is pretty fun to see. Especially when we get to the big climactic scene in New York, and it is just 25 minutes of just spectacle, and it looks fantastic. If Michael Bay should take notes from the Avengers. This is how you do an action scene that's mostly in CG, but how to do it by mixing with practical effects and actual emotional, compelling acting from your principal characters. I mean, by God, what a novel concept, right? What a novel concept. And I have seen all the Transformers movies, and I don't like any of them. They all suck. And I will put this action set piece from the Avengers against any action set piece from Transformers and be like, well, guess what? At least the Avengers did it better, and the characters are more compelling. And guess what? The characters in the Avengers are compelling. Because once it gets down to nitty-gritty, you see, they all come together. They assemble. The Avengers assemble. Cap clearly is the leader. Stark pretty much is like second in command. And of course, they all work together to try and take down the Shatari, which is causing and wreaking havoc. And there's a lot of cool moments in this New York fight scene. There's the moment where Hulk just fucking goes, when Hulk finally transforms and Banner gives a secret out. The reason why I can keep control is because I'm always angry. Then he hulks out and he just starts destroying everything in his path. Punching this thing, punching that thing. This big serpent, Leviathan looking thing comes roaring right at Hulk, and Hulk's just like, listen, motherfucker. Boom! Punches the bitch in the face, and this thing just topples over on his back and goes splat. There's also some pretty cool scenes with Captain America and the Shield, where he's like destroying everyone. Hawkeye's got some pretty cool scenes as well with his bow and arrow. Now, of course, while I do like Loki in this movie, and while Loki did have some pretty cool scenes in this movie, there are scenes in this particular movie where Loki, to me, comes across as a punching line. There's this one scene where Hawkeye throws an arrow at Loki. Loki catches it. Awesome, he caught it. It explodes, and he goes flying off this like glider thing and lands on his ass. And then when Loki interacts with the Hulk, and like Loki's like, I am a god, you will bow down to me. And Hulk just grabs Loki and uses him as a human slapjack and just destroys him. And then Hulk walks away and just like, puny god. Yeah. In the scenes where Loki's being badass, he's badass. In the scenes where Loki, to me, it looks like a joke. It is painfully laughable that Loki is not being taken seriously as a villain. I'm like, this guy's coming across as a bitch, not a badass. And it to some people they can they can be like, oh, I don't like this. Why are you doing this? And then others just like, that was pretty funny. But just my train of thought for a second. But yeah, of course, Loki is not the be-all, end-all villain of the entire Marvel universe, because at the end of the day, we all know who the real bad is. So let's try and wrap this up. So anyway, pretty much the World Council, launches this missile strike in order they're going to nuke New York, to put it in plain terms. And then, of course, like I said, throughout the entire movie, there was this underlying tension between Evans and Stark. And Evans had this great line where he said, that Stark is not willing to lay down to let the other guy crawl over him, so he can. But and then that one line comes into play in the end because Stark makes the sacrifice play. He takes the missile, goes into the wormhole in order to to stop the invasion by exploding the mothership, if you will, that controls where the Shatari and pretty much controls the Shatari, and the nuke destroys it, and the Shataris are defeated and destroyed. But in so doing so, he made the sacrifice play, and when it comes down to it, Stark is willing to do the sacrifice play in order for the greater good, and which he does, and which I thought was excellent and was handled perfectly, and I like it a lot. So anyway, yes, the Chitauri's all beaten. The Avengers do what they needed to do, which was avenge. And of course, before I forget, and I should have mentioned earlier, Phil Coulson, who had appeared in Iron Man 2, and Thor, his character is killed off in this movie, and it's actually the catalyst that actually assembles the Avengers, because Phil Coulson was the one that basically is the link that unites all these movies together. So by killing his character off, or so we thought, it was almost like saying, yes, the Phase 1 link is done. Now these characters are assembled and we don't need them anymore. So in that respect, to me, it worked. And I don't mind it whatsoever. It was a bummer because Phil Coulson is a cool character and he has some cool lines throughout everything. And especially, I love his interactions with Captain America, where he comes across like this geeky fanboy, which I thought was pretty cool. And also, kind of like, I can relate to something. I can relate to that, because if I saw one of my heroes, I'd be like, oh my god! Anyway. So the Avengers saved the world. Stark made the sacrifice play, and it looks great. And then we get to the mid-credit scene, where it's revealed that Thanos, the tyrant of tyrants, was the mysterious benefactor to Loki, and was the one that was actually pulling the strings behind the invasion. And of course, he gives that little smirk where he's pretty much like, yeah, this has only just begun. And I love it. Well, ladies and gents, that is my review of Marvel's The Avengers. This went on longer than I intended to, but a lot to say with this movie, because again, this is a very important movie, and it plays a huge role. Because if this movie would have failed, then the entire MCU would have failed. And the fact that this movie triumphed is the reason why the MCU, to this day, almost 10 years later, continues to keep going and is only getting better by every movie. So, obviously, I'm giving this movie is a solid 9 out of 10. There are a couple of nitpicks here and there, but does not diminish the enjoyment of this movie. Does not diminish the enjoyment by a long shot. It is still a fun movie to watch. The character bantering is fantastic. The action set pieces are fun as hell. And it does a great, phenomenal job at planting the seeds for what's to come in the future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am AG Legend. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time as we get to Phase 2 of the MCU.